I'd like to welcome you back to another show of The Lawyers. My name is Tom Connair. I'm an attorney in Claremont, New Hampshire at the law firm of Leahy, Denault, Connair, and Hodgman, a general practice firm. With me today is my co-host, Mr. Rob Curtis, who is with Van Dorn and Curtis in Orford, New Hampshire, and which is a litigation firm. Welcome, Robin, to another show.
Oh, thanks so much, Tom. It's great to be back.
So I understand that you've had some difficulties recently.
Well, yeah, I had my credit card stolen about a month ago.
Really?
But I don't really think I'm going to report it.
Why not?
Because whoever took it seems to spend less than my wife and I. So it seemed like... We had gotten some comments, folks, when the show ran 2 or 3 years ago that we were a little bit wooden, which I just found amazing. Guys as entertaining as us, so we thought we'd try to start the show with a joke. And maybe you can, I guess your way of voting will be whether you stay tuned after the first 45 seconds or so.
We'll also be open to having you send us jokes for future shows.
That's right. That's right.
Today we'd like to talk about the role of a lawyer / attorney in the judicial system. And there are varied roles, but bottom line, it's not just a job, as they say on the ads for the military, but we are considered officers of the court and play a key role in the administration of justice through the court system. And it's interesting that Robin and I are seekers of justice. We come at it from a little bit different perspectives. Robin in a strictly litigation firm, and I in a general practice firm that gets involved in addition to personal injury cases, a lot of other types of cases. So let me just start out by saying that I would sum it up as a role of a seeker of justice, an instrument of justice. And I'll give you some examples, but do you want to comment on that notion, Robin?
Well, I think I do agree, and I think that there are many different ways to do it. There are as many different kinds of lawyer jobs almost as there are jobs in society. People do it at all kinds of different things. A lot of lawyers never go to court. I have pretty strong feelings about what the role of trial lawyers has been, both historically and is in society now. And I love to talk about some of the things that they've accomplished. Unfortunately, I think today, because of a lot of the tort reform stuff and the things that the insurance companies say about trial lawyers, that some people tend to shy away from the term, that it's something to apologize for, and I don't feel like that. I think historically, John Adams, our second president, was a trial lawyer. Abraham Lincoln, debatably considered our greatest president, was a wonderful trial lawyer. And I think that there are so many things that trial lawyers have accomplished that go beyond individual cases, go beyond verdicts, which are big verdicts, which are money. If the trial lawyers hadn't taken the car companies on in the 50s and the 60s, a lot of the safety features that we all kind of acknowledge today that we have a right to as consumers wouldn't have happened. And there are an awful lot of products cases that have become safer because of the role of the trial lawyers. I mean, another, and this may be a little bit more controversial, Tom, but is the medical profession. Because it's my belief that trial lawyers and the legal community holding the medical profession to certain standards has been an agent for good. You know, I understand that there is an argument on the other side that we spend too much time practicing defensive medicine and let us do our thing, but you know, for all the people that I've represented in the past that have been victims of medical negligence, I think those people are glad that there are some rules that we have set that people have to live by. So I do think I agree, and I'd love to hear about some of the other ways that lawyers have been able to do things for the common good. But I think that trial lawyers have a long history of that.
Let me just follow up on that with John Adams. John Adams, as you may recall from 8th grade history, represented 8 individuals who were British, who were accused of murdering many colonialists just about at the beginning of the Revolutionary War. And John Adams, at the risk of safety to his family and what turned out to be a significant loss of income in his profession, said, you know, this is the right thing to do as an attorney. As an instrument of justice, everyone deserves a defense. So he represented the 8, and 6 of the 8, with a jury of colonialists, said are not guilty. And the other 2 received, I think they were found guilty of manslaughter. So it was one of those moments where John Adams stood up and said, you know, as an attorney, I have this obligation. And let me just read you him looking back on that moment in his old age. He called the defense of British soldiers, this was in 1770, quote, one of the most gallant, generous, manly, and disinterested actions of my whole life, and one of the best pieces of service I ever rendered for my country. And as Robin said, he went on to become the 2nd president of the United States after being a vice president to George Washington. So the role of the trial lawyers and attorneys in the promotion of the common good and justice is, it's, I think, really key to what we do and the reason that a lot of us are in this.
I think so, and you know, I'm taking a second here to let the train pass. It gets a little loud here when it starts rattling. But I think that Lincoln is also worth mentioning again for another reason. One of the things that he proves, and it explodes a kind of a general misconception about trial lawyers, is that being slick doesn't really have anything to do with it. People don't trust slick. And I can imagine Lincoln with his, you know, country accent and his rough looks and the body of a manual laborer, which he was, must have been just an incredible presence in front of juries. They tell a story, it's in the movies, whether it's true or not, it sounds like, if he didn't actually say it, it's the kind of thing he would have said. There's a story about a murder trial that he was involved in, defending the accused. And during the jury selection, which is when the lawyers get to talk to the prospective jurors, Lincoln asked one of the prospective jurors, well, do you know the prosecutor over there? Do you know? The prosecutor objected and said, Your Honor, Mr. Lincoln knows that knowing me doesn't disqualify somebody from jury service. And Lincoln said, no, John, you don't understand. I'm just worried a few of them may not know you. So it's a guy that I would have loved to have seen try a case. The other thing, too, is that it's kind of similarly Clarence Darrow, who was considered the great trial lawyer of the early part of the 20th century. They claim that his accent was so thick, this kind of Indiana, Kentucky accent that he had, and that he had a high-pitched voice. And so the point is, the stereotypes of some handsome TV newsman is not, that doesn't work in front of a real jury. I think they tend to, real juries have an incredible ability to see who's real and who isn't real. And it has nothing to do with being slick. The main thing is honesty. And once you've said something that causes you to lose their trust, you never get it back. The thing that impresses me the more I've seen the jury system work is their incredible capacity for doing the right thing and their ability to see what's true and what isn't. And the way you fit into that role doesn't have anything to do with packaging or wearing a fancy suit or using big words. It has to do with being real. And that's...
I agree, Robin. And I think the same holds true for judges who, for the most part, particularly in New Hampshire, get it. Because there are probably a lot more trials in front of judges than juries. And this is where a firm like mine gets involved in many different types of cases before judges where you're trying to do justice for your client, be it a woman who is abused by her husband in a restraining order case, possibly a parent whose child is being threatened to be taken away by the state for alleged abuse, be it an elderly individual who either is or is not in need of a guardianship, be it a relatively small criminal case where a judge is deciding, but there was an overambitious young cop who abused his authority, and in many, many different types of family law cases, which I have found can be a lot more stressful and emotional even than many big civil cases, because when you're talking about visitation and relationship with parents and custody of children, it's very can be very difficult for all involved. And that's where the role of a lawyer, and particularly the role of two lawyers in seeking justice, say in a divorce, can achieve a whole lot for the long-term relationship with the parents and the children. So, most firms in New Hampshire are, by virtue of I think, geography, small to middle firms. Many do general practice, some specialize, as does Robbins. and it's a real mixed bag. But I think the bottom line is, at least those attorneys who may be a little altruistic is, yeah, you want to make money and put your kids through college, but you also want to make sure that that justice is done, and that, you know, at the end of the day, maybe we're all a little better off because of what we do as attorneys, Robin.
Well, I think that's right, and I think that I'm interested. We're talking about the role of judges, because I think in jury trials, the judge's role can be a little bit different. It's no secret that the New Hampshire courts are clogged. And in a lot of the New Hampshire counties, getting in front of a jury can take an awful long time. And one of the problems with that is when you do get to trial, I tend to, I've seen judges that just are anxious to get everything done so quickly and over with, and then get on to the next thing. And my job then is to say, you know, Your Honor, we didn't create this glut, and the person I represent, this is the only chance that they're going to have to get justice over something that's very serious, and that's my concern. There are times in jury trials where, to do an effective job, you can't make keeping the judge happy be your first priority. I mean, I'll risk getting the judge upset at me if it's in my client's interest. What I can't risk is getting the jury upset at me, because if I don't have them on my side, then I don't have anything. And it's a delicate thing. What a lot of people don't understand is that most of the time that the attorneys are kind of hammering things out with the judges during a jury trial, the jury isn't there. So I've had occasions where I've had to speak very plainly to judges about how I think, what kind of a job I think they've done handling the case. It's not, when I represent people that have put their trust in me, they trust me to stand up for them when they need standing up for. And it doesn't really matter who it is that is presenting the problem at the time. So I guess all I'm trying to say is that in my job, it's impossible to keep judges, who I have a tremendous amount of respect for, don't get me wrong. They're a major part of the whole system. But keeping them happy all the time is not so much of a priority for me as making sure that they keep their eye on the ball about what's at issue in the trial.
And let me say too that our firm has partnered with Van Dorn and Curtis for the last 10 years. We do a tremendous amount of personal injury cases. There are some that when they end up going to trial, we use the expertise of Van Dorn and Curtis, since that's all they do, and there is no extra cost, obviously, to the client, because most of these cases are on a contingency basis, which means a percentage, and whatever that percentage is, it is shared between Van Dorn and Curtis and us in accordance with what each of us is doing. But I have seen Robin in action, and I can attest that he doesn't pull any punches, although he, for the most part, maintains his cool. But for an Irishman, sometimes that's a little bit difficult. Let me just mention, too, one of the other major efforts / cases that I have been personally involved in, and I've been privileged to be involved in, is the so-called Claremont lawsuit. And that, although I initiated it on the school board in Claremont in 1989, do not take credit other than throwing gas on the fire whenever the fire went down for the ultimate conclusion of that. And that, let me just very quickly go through what it was all about. This is a 1897 book. It's called The Constitution of New Hampshire. And being on the school board, we were always struggling because of high property taxes with paying the basics. So I looked at the Constitution, and it said, knowledge and learning, generally diffused, being essential to the preservation of a free government, it shall be the duty of the legislature and magistrates in all future periods of the government to cherish the interest of public schools. So in 1989, we initiated an effort to say education wasn't just a nice thing to have, but it was essential to the preservation of a free government and a constitutional right. We got other school districts to join in, and over a period of years, after a period of years, filed suit. It went all the way up to the Supreme Court probably 10 different times. And the court said, yes, education is a fundamental right, and the state has the obligation to pay for it. Well, for all of you who live in New Hampshire, you know that this is an ongoing battle annually. However, not just myself, but probably a dozen other lawyers who were involved in this, many of whom were trial attorneys, we all donated our time and didn't make a dime on it, but we knew it was the right thing to do. And now, although we're still a long way from behind what I consider to be a fair and adequate solution, education is a fundamental right for our children in the state, and this is also being debated elsewhere. So I just use this as one more example of the role that an attorney can play in bringing about societal good and justice for all, particularly those who don't have the ability to fend for themselves, like our kids. So it's a wonderful vocation, at least for those who stick it out, and I continue to enjoy it.
Yeah, and I think about some of the cases, Tom, that we've worked on together over the past 10 years. And, you know, it's unfortunate that there's a lot more I wish I could say about some of them, but often when we settle the bigger cases, they are subject to confidentiality agreements, which means that there's very little that you can say about them. But I do know that we were able to get justice for a young family who lost the father, the breadwinner, and they were not in great shape when Tom and I went down south, and I don't mean in southern New Hampshire, to meet them, and we were able to do things that, you know, was going to give them some financial security of which they had none. I can think of a case where Tom and I helped a horribly injured veteran who was a Vietnam veteran, who's also one of the, I know Tom knows who I'm talking about, was one of the great class acts that I ever represented. And those cases, which again I do wish I could say more about, not to brag about the result, but to give you an idea of the kind of people that we represented and the kind of connection that we had with them, you know, really give you the sense that you can accomplish some good. And
you've never regretted your vocation?
Oh no, I haven't. I have a sideline. I write short stories, and but I always say to my wife, I think if I ever really retired, then I'd be worried that the stories would be. I live my life best, I think, doing everything at once. And I have a feeling that if I retired, then writing short stories might seem more like a job, and then I worry maybe nothing would come. So,
and I think I feel the same way. I do a lot of outdoor photography, but I think if as a job it wouldn't be nearly as much fun. But I think we do great things as attorneys, and not to pat ourselves on the back, but we serve an essential role for the preservation of that free government that our founding fathers fought life and limb for. And all of our cases aren't seven-figure cases, but some of them are. And in many cases, in most cases, we believe that justice has been served. And I'm thankful to be a part of that system.
And I also think it tells a lot by the kind of folks that you partner with. Tom is really one of the class acts of the New Hampshire bar. He's been on the state ethics committee, was for years, which, you know, decides what's right for attorneys to do, what's not right for them to do. I was impressed with him immediately when I met him. I mean, he'd been a commander in the Navy. He'd had, you know, experiences before he came into the law. And one of the things I think that actually helps when we work on these cases is we're also very good friends. And I think of a time a couple of years ago, Tom and I went out to do a little sightseeing and driving around in Montana and Wyoming, and everything worked great until we got to Yellowstone, and Tom wanted to take pictures of some grizzly bears. So he's trying to set up this outing, and I said to him, well, yeah, but what about if the grizzly bears get ugly? And he said, oh, no, that's not going to be a problem. They're going to give us some bear spray and some bells. And that was the major disagreement we had. I said, if I go, there's going to be somebody with a rifle standing next to us, or somebody's going to give me one, but I'm not going to try to get close to a grizzly bear with a little bit of bear spray. So he's braver than me, but as a team, it works pretty well.
Yeah, and let me just say that the feeling of respect and confidence is, and friendship is mutual. And I wouldn't have partnered with him so long if that wasn't the case. And let me also say the story about the bear is true. And Robin was convinced that if he's going to do it, we got to have a gun somewhere. But maybe that was an act of God that we didn't do it then, but we'll see. So we thank you very much for watching us, and we hope you've enjoyed it. And if you need to contact us, you can find the information in the credits. So thank you again, Robin.
Thanks very much, folks.